The most disappointing way to buy your first or next Rolex is to walk into a store, point at whatever is in the case, and hope it ages well. The opposite approach is to understand which references are quietly becoming future staples, watches that are hard to get now and will be even harder in a few years, whether because of demand, allocation, or inevitable changes to the catalogue. Those are the Rolexes you want to think about before 2026 turns into a string of "if only I'd bought it when" conversations. Time to get into it. Your goal is not to hoard lottery tickets. It is to own a handful of Rolexes that you can actually wear for years, with the comforting knowledge that if you ever need to part with one, there will be a ready market waiting. The 9 references here are not wild speculations. They are the models that come up again and again when serious collectors in their 40s and 50s talk about the pieces I'd prioritize before the landscape changes again. Number 1. Submariner Date 126610LN. If there is one modern Rolex you buy before anything else, it is the black Submariner Date. The 126610LN is the definition of a core holding, 41mm, ceramic bezel, rock-solid movement, and a design that has been imitated to the point of cliché, because it works. This is the watch non-enthusiasts recognize as a Rolex, and that matters for long-term liquidity. Collectors who own several divers from different brands often admit that the sub is the one they never list for sale. One man in his early 50s with a sizable collection put it simply: if everything else had to go, the sub would stay. When a watch earns that role in so many real collections, it is worth getting in while you still can at a sensible price, and before any significant design shift resets the market all over again. Number 2. Submariner 124060, no date. The no-date Submariner is the purist's answer, and that purity tends to age extremely well. The 124060 trades the date window and Cyclops for a cleaner, more symmetrical dial that appeals to collectors who care about design coherence more than everyday convenience. It is also the Submariner that signals you know what you're looking at. Many owners buy the no-date as a second sub and slowly discover it gets more wrist time than their date model because it feels calmer and more focused. A collector in his late 40s described it as the one watch I can wear for a week straight without getting visually tired. As the market continues to rediscover appreciation for restraint, this reference is unlikely to stay under the radar, especially in excellent condition with full sets. Number 3. GMT-Master 126710BLRO Pepsi. The steel Pepsi GMT is the other great pillar of modern Rolex sports. The red and blue bezel is an icon in its own right, tied to the earliest days of jet travel and recognized across generations. The current 126710BLRO keeps that history alive with modern materials and a versatile 40mm case that works on Oyster or Jubilee. Owners who manage to secure one often talk about it differently than their other pieces. The Submariner might be the practical daily, but the Pepsi feels like the fun watch, the one that makes them smile every time the light hits the bezel. That emotional pull, combined with constrained supply and enduring global demand, is exactly why this reference belongs on a short list of Rolexes to prioritize before 2026 is too far behind you. Number 4. GMT-Master 126710BLNR Batman. Where the Pepsi looks backward, the Batman feels distinctly modern. The black and blue ceramic bezel, especially on Jubilee, has gone from controversial to contemporary classic in an astonishingly short time. For many men in their 40s and 50s, it hits a sweet spot, recognizably a GMT-Master, but slightly more subdued than the Pepsi and more versatile with darker wardrobes. One owner who travels frequently for work said the BLNR became his quiet companion. The sub stays home more often than you'd think. The Batman sees the most airports. When a reference earns that kind of real-world role, its long-term desirability usually takes care of itself. If you prefer a slightly more understated take on the GMT story, this is the version to acquire while you still can without extreme contortions. If you're enjoying this so far, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss a drop of luxury watch insight. Number 5. Explorer 3612470. The modern 36mm Explorer is the quiet insider's pick. It looks almost too modest in photos, time only, black dial, 369 numerals, and then you put it on and realize how perfectly it disappears into your actual life. It works with a suit, with a polo and chinos, with a sweater and jeans. It never feels like overkill. A collector who had spent years cycling through larger divers and chronographs described the Explorer 36 as the watch that finally let me stop thinking about watches during the week. That is not a small compliment. As sizing trends continue to swing back toward classic proportions, and as more people experience 36mm on the wrist, the 124270 is well positioned to be one of those references older collectors talk about with real affection, and younger collectors chase retroactively. Number 6. Explorer 2226-570 Polar. If you like the idea of a tool watch that does not look like everyone else's first Rolex, the white dial Explorer 2 is the place to look. At 42mm, it has more wrist presence than a Sub or GMT, but the fixed steel bezel and bold orange 24-hour hand give it a distinctive, purposeful look that many seasoned collectors find addictive. Owners who choose the Polar often do so deliberately to avoid the usual choices. One man in his early 50s said he wanted the Rolex other people don't recognize immediately. The Explorer 2 became his year-round daily, robust enough for travel and outdoor use, but crisp and legible in the office. When a model sits slightly off the mainstream while still being unmistakably Rolex, it tends to age particularly well in the secondary market. Number 7. Datejust 36 Fluted Bezel on Jubilee. For a certain generation, the Datejust 36 with fluted bezel and Jubilee bracelet is not just a watch. It is the image of Rolex itself. This is the configuration that has graced magazine ads, family photographs, and boardrooms for decades. The beauty of owning one today is that it still works perfectly as a modern daily watch, especially with a sober dial in blue, silver, black or grey. One longtime enthusiast who finally bought his Datejust 36 in his mid-50s called it the watch that makes my collection feel grown up. He had sports models from multiple brands, but the Datejust was the one he wore to weddings, graduations, and formal dinners without a second thought. In terms of long-term value, it is hard to argue against a design that has already survived generations and shows no sign of losing relevance. Number 8. Datejust 41 Smooth Bezel on Oyster. If the 36 is the timeless classic, the Datejust 41 with smooth bezel on an Oyster bracelet is the contemporary counterpart. It has presence without flash, more modern, slightly more assertive on the wrist, and perfectly suited to men who grew up in the era of larger watches. With the right dial, dark blue, slate, or black, it becomes the watch that does not shout Rolex across the room, but absolutely reads as successful, put together, and intentional. Many owners who start with a sports model later admit that the DJ41 ends up doing most of the work in their week. It slips under a cuff, looks excellent with business casual, and feels appropriate in almost any setting. As more collectors pivot from chasing scarcity to seeking versatility, this reference is likely to become an even more important pillar of the line. Number 9. Yacht-Master 41 26622 Rhodium or Blue Dial. The Yacht-Master 40 in steel and platinum sits in a lovely niche, more luxurious than a Submariner, less overt than a Date. The platinum bezel has a distinctive matte and polished texture that catches light in a softer, more refined way than ceramic. Paired with the rhodium dial and light blue accents, or the sunburst blue dial, it becomes a sports watch with a distinctly gentlemanly tone. Collectors who buy the Yacht-Master often describe it as the grown-up Rolex sports model. One owner said he expected it to be a special occasion piece and discovered instead that it became his default for holidays, dinners, and weekends away. Because it has historically sat just outside the mainstream hype, it has often been relatively overlooked. That is precisely why it makes sense to focus on it now, before broader attention catches up with what experienced collectors already know. Stepping back, these 9, Submariner Date, No Date, Submariner, both modern GMTs, Explorer 36, Explorer 2 Polar, the twin Datejusts, and the Yacht-Master 40 form a remarkably complete picture of what modern Rolex does best. They cover pure tool, refined sport, and everyday elegance. They are recognizable without being faddish, and they already enjoy deep, global demand that is unlikely to evaporate by 2026 or beyond. The key is to treat them not as chips to flip, but as foundations. If you choose one or two of these references that genuinely fit your wrist, wardrobe, and temperament, you will have pieces you can wear hard for the next decade with the reassuring knowledge that they will not be forgotten by the market. That is what "before they sell out" really means here, before allocations tighten further, before incremental changes nudge prices up, and before you find yourself paying tomorrow's premium for today's missed opportunity. Until next time, stay stylish and stay informed.